And I request you to reassemble in the hall at 2:15, please. Hearty welcome, sir. Mr. Balaji Kanigicherla, founder and CEO in Ada Systems Private Limited. Hearty welcome to you as well. Mr. Nitin Komawar, CEO Ketone Technologies Incorporated. Hearty welcome. And Mr. Vijay Naik, CEO and President Karmic US LLC. Hearty welcome to you as well, sir. I'd like to give it over to Mr. Pradeep Gupta.
Hello. Can I have this mic on, please? Hello. Oh, it's on. All okay. Good afternoon, friends. The session after lunch is the death session. And, we can see some death rattles here. And I guess that is why the organizers kept one of the most interesting and fascinating sessions immediately after lunch. Because entrepreneurship is the future of any industry. If you really want to make things happen, yes, there are going to be large investments, large companies and so on, but until and unless the entrepreneur DNA gets into any kind of an industry, things will not happen. And that is the reason why today this particular session becomes of primary importance. The industry needs to be built upon the strength of entrepreneurship, and for that ecosystem to evolve, there are multiple issues that have to be looked at. You have to look at the entire issue of where the money is coming from. You have to look at the issue of government policies in terms of capacity building, in terms of IP protection, manpower. There are numerous issues that we need to look at. And I'm glad that I've got a fantastic panel here with me, which can talk about different kind of aspects of this issue. One thing we as panelists also decided was that it's not just that we want to talk, we want to actually interact with all of you. And therefore, we are going to restrict our time. Each speaker is going to speak for about 10 to 12 minutes each, and then rest of the time we will actually be having a lot of discussion, some initiated by me and some initiated by people who are out there in the audience. Let me start off by calling the first speaker to come and address us. And for entrepreneurship, the most important thing is follow the money. So let's start with the money, right? Rest of us can then follow. So I would request Hemant Bhai, who has invested in a number of ventures in this area. There are 3 companies in Silicon Valley that he funded, and therefore he can bring tremendous amount of experience about what really is happening in this area, what needs to be done, what is it that the investors look for, what are the lessons that we can learn from some other countries. In short, how do you get the money? Over to you, Hemant Bhai.
Hello. Thank you, Pradeep, and thank you, my fellow panelists, for letting me go first. I think the reason for letting me go first is I'm always known to be starting a controversy. And so be prepared for waking up after your hearty, wonderful lunch that you had. So let's go to the next slide, which is where I start being controversial. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. So, as a slide indicates, there are been, over the years, number of export-oriented industries in India. And they have been quite successful. What I'm saying in this slide, which is very different from a lot of what you heard in the morning, is a question of, is the fabless semiconductor our next export industry that's going to develop? And before I expound on that thesis, let me point out that this is not quite quite different from what the end objective of the people who are speaking earlier in the inaugurated session. The fact remains that India has a large gap between the import and export of electronic components industry. And one way to reduce that is to basically focus on building the entire ecosystem, starting from a fab to an OEM, an ODM, and the device manufacturers, everything in India. And that would clearly mean that we would not be importing that many. It's a laudable goal. I would set out to say that that needs to be thought through in terms of a strategy. And no business succeeds by trying to do everything at first in one shot. But we all know that government doesn't run a business. So it's our job to talk about how to enter the semiconductor market and succeed. So the next slide, I talk about the semiconductor business models. If you actually look at the semiconductor business models, there are a few things I want to highlight. You know, there are integrated device manufacturing units like an Intel, which own everything, which own a fab, design, packaging, everything. There is an independent fabs like TSMC, which have customers from all over, but they don't have any product of their own. And you have a packaging and assembly of the components of the IC that are spread around and supported by various government subsidies. I gave one example of Malaysian one, Dongbu. There is a middle one that I skipped over, which is a fabless semiconductor. I believe that in India, the best strategy is to actually focus on that segment. And there are reasons for my saying that. You know, the fabless company requires a low capital. It requires a skilled engineering workforce. It is actually highly profitable. When chatting among the panelists, I would pleasantly surprised to see somebody is going to cover that part of it as to how profitable it is. But more importantly, it has a high export potential and it has a low infrastructure need. I don't need to have a fab running, or I don't need to have a lot of equipment. It's like another software business. You do need to be closer to market, but we can actually build this industry and generate a lot of value or capture a lot of value. So the next slide, before I go into talk about, I have to sort of explain what my career is and who the hell I am, because the Kanakia Ventures doesn't say lot about what I do or did. IIT Powai, Stanford PhD EE, worked at TCS before I went abroad, worked at Bell Labs 6-7 years in the research group. All of this was networking oriented. I started a first company, Torrent Networks, which was a router company. I sold it to Ericsson for $400 million back in 2000. I started some photonics company, like photonics switching company, Photoris, co-founded it with some others. I also did a global ISP called Gemplex, which was the first acquisition Tata Communication made. So I have a serial entrepreneur in my blood. But unfortunately, after a while, I got out of doing that and became a venture capitalist, which is an interesting difference. I was a partner in a $560 million fund. You can read the rest of the stuff, but the important stuff is that I did semi investments in US. And so let's take a look at the semi portfolio that I assembled among other companies. Now I want to point out some of those to sort of see what can be done. Tylera is a 128 core microprocessor. Inperion is a power electronics DC to DC converter. Terranetics, which was an Ethernet PHY on a copper, 10 gigabit Ethernet PHY, and so on. You can see some of them. And the reason I'm giving this portfolio information is really the next slide. So there are current challenges. I have to actually read through this. There are current challenges in semiconductor investing. There is a growing design cost at a complex SoC. you require something around $80 to $160 million investment to profitability. Right now, what you are seeing as an exit is $100 million to $300 million exit value. I have some examples there. That's not sufficient returns. There is also other challenges. You need a faster time to market because everything is becoming an application specific. The design cycles are faster. It's not like putting something into a networking router where design cycle was 24 months. Now we are talking in terms of putting in iPad, new models, new things. You have to change things. The companies, I don't want to read the rest of the stuff. The whole point of that slide is because of this, the venture capital funds and private equity investors are actually scaling back worldwide, including in the Silicon Valley, in making investments in semiconductor. The semiconductor market by itself is not suffering. It's a very large market. You have about a worldwide IC market of $298 billion in 2010. It's expected to grow to $550 billion in 2016, taking into account the emerging market growth for consumer devices as well. There is a globalization of IC market. I'll actually point out to that next slide.